And here we are. Hello, everybody. Kelly Byrnes here. And today I get the honor of speaking with Kristin Herman. Hey, Kristin, welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to finally get to talk with you on our LinkedIn Live. And we've known each other for over a year. Yeah, over a year we just figured out. We met about a year ago. And Kristin and I met through NABO, the National Association of Women Business Owners in Kansas City. And we had coffee a couple months ago. And it was during the coffee that I realized what a special person Kristin is and that she has such a great message about life and that she lives it so authentically. I just really wanted to share her with everybody. So thank you so much for coming on and giving the opportunity to share your story and your life, your philosophy, and it's so aligned with what I talk about with my friends and colleagues all the time. So thank you so much. Kristin has been with Northwestern Mutual for 14 years as a certified financial planner, a wealth management advisor, but her philosophy of that is wholehearted wealth and living by design. So she goes a lot deeper than the ROI of it all. But the ROI of it all is important to me as well. So while she and I spent most of our time talking about living by design, and that's going to be the focus of this conversation, I do want to point out that I want to emphasize, although this isn't going to be what we talk about today, but that it is important that women increase the financial literacy. So just in preparation of today, I did a little bit of research wondering, is there a difference in financial literacy between men and women and in retirement planning and saving? And Kristin, I'm sure you know all this data off the top of your head, but not being in that field, I did do some research and I saw the differences and just how they, in survey responses and all that kind of thing, the gender gap does affect how women live in retirement years, but also of the years leading up to that. So one data point that I saw that 95% of the gender gap in health and educational outcomes has been closed in many countries. Less than 60% of the gender gap in economic participation and opportunity has been closed. And that's from the World Health Organization. So that got my attention and made me dig even deeper. And nearly 2/3, 62% of working women are behind in their retirement savings. So 62% of women are behind. 48% of men are behind too. So my interviews are watched by men and women. So come on, people, we got to get on it. Nearly half of women are confident in their finances. About 48% of women are confident, and only 28% feel confident enough to take any action. So that's not very much. But I think in seeing those numbers, what it made me think of was, well, working with somebody that can give you the confidence. And Kristin is definitely one of those people. There are a couple others in NABO in our chapter, and there's just great people in there. But Kristin, your philosophy of your life by design, living by design, is just ties right in with that, building confidence, I think, in the wholehearted wealth. The financials tie in with and come from like a catch-22 kind of other areas of our life. So our purpose today is to inspire people to reflect on your core values of your life, not just the financials, but your core values. And then how are you living in alignment with them overall in your life? So let's get into it. So I've mentioned living by design. So will you just talk about that for a little bit?
Sure, Kelly. Well, thank you again for having me. It's just such a joy to be here. And so many people are walking around today with just fear. They're subconsciously motivated by fear, worry, anxiety, scarcity. It's like we're carrying these weights that we don't even know are there. But then you pause and look around and it's like, oh, like when we take a step back and get a different perspective, which we'll talk more about with my own experience of my dad prematurely dying. He was only 58 years old. The end of your life is when you look back and you see wisdom and what does and doesn't matter. And walking through that journey, it was about an 8-month journey from the time he was diagnosed with stage 4 kidney cancer to when he died. And I didn't know, but it was like I was digging for treasure and had struck gold. And he shared with me, he was just so open-hearted about what did he really value about the way that he lived and what deep regrets did he have. And I see now how he had, even though we never really lacked for anything, like I grew up upper middle class and dad always had a really good job, was a great saver, but yet you peel back a little bit beneath the surface and you realize, oh, that there's this fear and this scarcity and this anxiousness that drives so much and just robs us of true peace and joy. And that begged the question of how can we be okay even when things outside of our control often are threatening that internal sense of well-being.
Yeah. And people have those things now with the impending recession. Are we having one? Are we not having one? And I've been studying ChatGPT and using that lately. And I keep seeing articles about the fear of people are afraid of losing their jobs to AI. And then plus bigger fears of losing jobs because of the economy, because of changes in the market. Losing houses. People have families with challenges and issues, and then health. So tell about the experience with your dad. Go into a little bit more about that, because that's what led you to thinking about life differently.
Yeah, absolutely. So it just so happened that it was this 2018, actually, this past Sunday was the 5-year anniversary of his death. And it was such a gift, Kelly. Again, it's all about perspective. You can choose, like, what you think about expands, what you dwell on grows. And I choose to see that season as such a gift because I had my son, who's 5 as of this May. I was on maternity leave with him. And so he was born May 25th. My dad died July 16th. So that whole summer, and we knew it was coming. And so I just had a lot of time to reflect and process and just pray. And I just so happened to be working with my personal and business coach, who has this exercise that of ultimately creating a mission statement that applies to your whole life, including work. And it starts with knowing your values, both internal and external values, identifying your gifts and passions, and then creating this mission statement.
Nice.
And it was not an easy, I mean, the values piece and the gifts and passions, that was easier than like, how do we really streamline this into creating a mission statement? So we ended up sending like these 20 questions to help me work through what does really, what on earth am I here for?
Right.
So it was at that time that I was going through that exercise as I'm processing losing my dad this side of heaven. And it was so like this culmination of not only him sharing, he had built a beautiful life for our family, right? But then it was as he was dying that he was sharing with me, ultimately he had lived anxiously attached to these outcomes. And he really did. He shared this with me of like operating in this way of with the external world of look at my family, look at my house, look at my career. Aren't I successful? And the cry of his heart was, aren't I worthy of love? And the resounding answer is yes, but it has nothing to do with any of those external metrics. Right? Society cues us to live with this conditional sense of well-being, this outside in approach to once I get the house, once I have this level of income, once my family looks like this, or I take this type of vacations, then I'll feel what, right? What we really want is the feeling.
Right.
I want to feel successful. I want to feel secure. I want to feel peace and happy, right? But guess what? You take the vacation, you get the house, and it's like you get back from your vacation and oh my gosh, I need another one. I'm exhausted. Or these things went wrong. Or, you have this house and these bills end up coming, right? And so it's like, and then the benchmark moves. Like a couple of years later, like your friend gets another nicer one and you want that one, right?
Yeah.
How can we really live? Not that those things are inextricably bad. It's not that. Like, but it's just that we're not defined by it.
I think, did you talk about when we were having coffee about your dad at some of your events with you, and you have a brother, right?
Mm-hmm.
And didn't he talk to you about being at some of your events and being proud of you at those, but inside he felt this anxiousness and like he wasn't really present?
Yeah. So he shared with me once my oldest is 7 now. She was 2 when he passed away before he got sick. So I think she was 1 at the time. It was like 2016. And he shared with me that growing up, as my brother and I were growing up, he coached our teams. He was involved, yet I think subconsciously he viewed it as a sacrifice away from his work. And then on the other side of it, being a papa and spending time with us, he's like, no, this is actually what really matters.
So that tugged at his heart in a different way. But he felt I think the honesty of that, how he felt as a parent and aspiring a career and measuring by society. I have to be a coach because that's one of the check boxes, coaching
really
my kids.
Joy. He loved. I mean, he was so fun, enthusiastic, but yet there was this pull.
Yeah.
I'm the same way. Like I am very driven and forward thinking, like living in the future. And so it is a discipline. I love my kids and I enjoy them. I delight in them. And like that has helped a whole new dimension of savoring this season because they will not be small forever.
Mm-hmm.
And again, perspective is so critical because we all get it, like in our heads, we understand, but yet the reality of, gosh, these things are frustrating. Like my kids are whining or they're fighting with each other.
Yes.
And again, that doing the inner work, Kelly, it's not easy. I mean, it has been an intentional, like for me, particularly over the last 3 years of diving in. Because for me in my work, I deeply desire to make a great impact and to help people. And the outcome is a metric of impact.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And there are people in the financial world that are not necessarily motivated by the purest of intentions. I'm not saying that mine aren't, completely perfect, but I deeply desire to help people. And yet the same business coach that I did that exercise with, worked with him over, 5 or 6 years. And from the beginning, he's like, Kristin, I see you as this, making this type of an impact. And it's like, okay, well, I'm here now. What is keeping me from getting there? And my husband 3 years ago, because I was thinking about hiring this other like money mindset person, I realized like there is, and ultimately it was the scarcity mindset. Like there's blocks as I we have been really generous over the years, but then I found myself being worked up over being overcharged for a little cup of coffee or something, right? Like it's not right there. And really it is that scarcity mindset. And so anyway, wanting to hire or thinking about hiring this gal that was not cheap at all. It would have been a major investment, but yet, she talked about, okay, well, you get this kind of return and over this period of time. I'm like, okay, well, that seems reasonable. And my husband just being like, Kristin, like, I love you and I want the best for you, but the problem is not in your head. The problem is in your heart. Like, okay, I don't disagree with you, but what do I do about that?
Yeah.
So this began the journey of Wholehearted Wealth. I didn't even know it at the time. But my word of the year next year, so that started in 2020. My word of the year for 21 was abundance, because I realized I lived with this scarcity mindset subconsciously. So what does that look like to live? Ultimately, it's like thinking about next to a river, like believing that it's going to flow and it's going to come versus being in the desert. Like, okay, well, if there's extra, then I can share. But if there's not, then you're not maybe necessarily going to see a pretty side of me. Right? But just that faith and that confidence of everything's going to be okay.
Yes.
I'm okay. Even if things around me, like even if there is a drought or, it's the heat comes, right? Like I'm going to send my roots down deep and be connected to a life source and nutrients and water that you can't always see externally, but I'm just going to believe that it's secure attachment versus anxious attachment to outcomes.
And that comes from inside, not from the external of what kind of car you drive or what kind of house you have, or that your kids are involved in the latest trendy, club sports or whatever, the travel teams and, the ego-based or external sources.
That's right. And again, not that we can't enjoy those.
That's right. Yes.
Like I played competitive sports growing up. I love it. And I want my kids to enjoy it if they so choose. But it's just that, again, we're not defined by it.
Right.
If you already know your worth and your identity in who you are versus what you do, then it all just gets to be an overflow.
Yes.
Versus, like for me, I felt myself as I reflected growing up, like I was pretty good at sports and school and, friendships and whatnot. But I see now how, anytime that things didn't go well, it would leave me clamoring for my next hit of success so that I could feel okay. And then ultimately, who knew? Like I actually had the shame that if I'm not perfect, then am I really going to be loved?
Yeah.
And then that drove the anger, which again is not the pretty side. So just realizing, no, my worth comes not from what I do, but who I am first and foremost.
And that comes, you have to have that, inside. So that's who you are. That's how you show up. So that all ties in with the, I don't know if I sent it to you, but I will after today. And if anybody, I'll post the link in the chat and the comments, the My Fulfilling Life workbook. So I do the same kind of work, and it starts with, who am I? And my grandmother taught us when we were growing up at night, we had a mantra. She was from Chicago, and she would come and stay with us, or she'd stay at a hotel, and we would take turns spending the night. And she would have us fall asleep to this mantra: I like myself, I like myself, I like myself. And it was to get us to think of that inside, to get your self-worth internal. And she also was very spiritual, and we grew up Catholic, and there was prayers and all that too as part of it. But so it starts with my fulfilling life, starts with who I am. And one of the exercises is, what do you like about yourself? And that's something that I have clients reflect on as well. And there's several exercises in that portion. And then it's your vision for your life. What do you want your life to look like? And these different components, what do you want it to be? And then you figure out the strategies and tactics and time, and how are you going to spend your life to create it the way you want it to be, and how all of that aligns makes it fulfilling. So it's not happy, joy all the time. Like I liked you saying about your kids, and you can love your kids, but they're, they can be loud and fight with each other, and kids are annoying, and you can love them and all that, but they're, if the people who act like their kids are perfect all the time, there's more going on there internally that's another rule. My Aunt Margaret's rule is, I bring this into group coaching. If your kids are perfect, you can't be in the group. That's in group coaching, if your life is perfect, you can't be in the group. But in her friend's group was, if your kids are perfect, you can't be our friend, because our kids aren't perfect. So she and my mom and their group of friends would just be able to. And I always was so offended. Like, what do you mean, Mom? Your kids are perfect.
Yeah.
But so I think owning that, is okay as a parent, as a professional person. It's not about perfect. It's about honesty and authentic.
Absolutely. Well, my coach ended up recommending this book. It's called Play to Win by Larry Wilson. And that was so impactful, because when we live by default, it's this scarcity mindset and this fear, and that's our brains are hardwired to keep us alive. And so we're constantly scanning. It used to be more physical threats, but now more emotional for what could harm us. And so again, it's all about perspective. If that's what you're focusing on, then the natural result is playing not to lose.
Yeah.
For the sports people out there, like, how does a game look if you're playing not to lose? You're more defensive. It's ugly. Like, it's not fun. And you never really know who you are and like what you're capable of.
Mm-hmm.
On the contrary, when you play to win, that's taking risks in the direction of your mission and values. And we may not know what the outcome will be, but redefining, okay, if I don't get the outcome I'm looking for, rather than win, lose, it's win or learn. And we can really learn and grow when we don't.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And create circumstances for your success rather than just see what else is going on or cross your fingers and hope cool things happen. Like that's leaving everything in other people's hands. That's not a great way. That's not going to be fulfilling when you're 95 years old thinking about looking back on your life, or 58 years old knowing that you have terminal illness and looking back thinking, wow, I wish I did these things a little differently.
That's right.
That's
right. Yeah. Asking those questions of, okay, what if I only had, and I love this idea of, okay, imagine you have 7 years left to live. The good news is you're totally financially independent and you can't fail, right? You have surplus of resources. The bad news is you only have 7 years. How do you spend your time, right? If you're totally healthy, and that really helps get clarity on what is most important here. And for me, I realized, I would still want to work to a degree, and because I deeply desire to make an impact and help people, I wouldn't necessarily meet and work with everyone, right? I have clarity on what are the types of relationships that do make the greatest impact and really give me joy.
I love that exercise. 7 years and you're healthy and you're financially stable. So then think about all the things you would want to do. How would you spend your time every day? What would your ideal day look like? Okay, so then look at it after that. What can you do of those things you write down for those 7 years? What can you do now? So even not knowing if you have 7 years or not. The fact is, some of us listening will have fewer than 7 years, and some people will have way more than 7 years. But what of those things that you list can you incorporate into your life? And when are you going to do those?
I was listening to a podcast yesterday, Kelly, that he talked about like asking a question. When in your life have you had lack, right? Can you remember a time where you maybe didn't have abundant resources and maybe there was a little bit of like, oh, things are tight, right? Most people can. There are a few who cannot.
Yeah.
And so imagine you're 55 years old, and if you can remember that time where you didn't have abundant resources, you're not going to go back to that, right? And so people will naturally play it safe, right? And thinking about especially planning for this time in life where hopefully you don't have to always work for a paycheck. Maybe you get to this point where you're financially independent, but yet if there is this like concern of, well, what if I run out of money, or what if the market's down, or, what if healthcare costs go up, whatever that is. So people will naturally spend significantly less and then wake up at age 85 and realize, oh, my balance sheet is really healthy, but I would have done things a lot differently along the way. And so it's like, I couldn't have written the story better myself of where I am today. I didn't set out to get into becoming a wealth management advisor or, the world of finance. Like, I was just a business major in college. I actually wanted to be a missionary when I was growing up. Gone to Honduras 4 different years in a row, and just it had my whole heart seeing that impact of these kids that had lived on the streets and ended up coming into this home where they were homeschooled and ended up, thought they wouldn't get past 3rd grade and graduating high school, coming to the States for college, going back founder of starting their own families and businesses.
Wow.
Amazing. Like, I want to be part of that.
Yeah.
And then felt like, actually, business is where I'm feeling led. And okay, but if I'm going to be here, then I want to make an impact. I want to make a lot so that I can give a lot away. So anyway, today, and sorry, it's like getting really dark outside.
Yeah, that was funny how the light changed. It got dark over here too.
Sorry.
Mhm.
So, and my husband has a psychology background, and so we talk a lot about, money and just people, right? And how we spend and relate to it. And a quotable quote here, it'll go in a book someday, but money is a measure of desire, right? You're willing to spend more or less on something depending on how much you want it. And desire is a measure of the heart. Like, where are you looking to for pleasure, success, satisfaction, joy? And so where you spend your money, money is inextricably tied to your heart. And therefore, if we feel any sense of insecurity, which I think everybody does, some people are really good at performing their way out of it or hiding it or whatever, everybody has shame, right? And it will come out in the way that we spend and relate to money. And going back to that secure attachment, I love, again, learning about human behavior and attachment styles. And so the goal is secure attachment. And with our parents, like for mine, I grew up in a wonderful home and my parents loved me. And yet even the best intentioned parents are going to fall short.
Sure.
Heard a podcast one time that it was a gal who is a psychiatrist, one of the two. And she has 5 kids, and they told all their kids, we have a college fund for you, and we have a counseling fund for you. Like, going back to, okay, the standard is not perfection. Like, let's just put it out there that we will mess you up in some way, right?
Yeah.
And so going back to that attachment styles, there are like 3, I think sometimes 4, but with the money thing and secure attachment, I think it's easy to fall into one or 2 groups or on the spectrum. One side is avoidant, like, I don't want to talk about money. I'll just bury my head in the sand, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the other is that anxious attachment or desire to control it. And just like anything in life, there is a healthy balance. And there's good and downsides to both.
Yeah.
So how do we have a healthy relationship where we're not avoiding it, but it also doesn't have power? It's like, do you have money, or does money have you?
Yeah, that's great. And I think that was why I wanted to talk with you and share you with everyone, that I could see that that you live this way genuinely. I did not want to have a conversation about that this was a sales pitch to go work with you as a financial planner, although people are welcome to contact you for that. But really, it's that last part. Money is a measure of desire, and desire is a measure of your heart, and your heart shows your core values. Mm-hmm. And so the core value of that scarcity mindset and your mindset and scarcity or abundance, that is also revealed in how you behave and treat people. So money is just part of that, and your decisions that you make. I don't often talk about money in the core values conversations that I have with leaders and with about their own core values or the alignment with the company, but it comes to play in everything and all the decisions that you make, running a household or running a business, running a company. So it's a key driver and outcome of how you show up as in life and in leadership. Mm-hmm. So I think that reflection there. I'll post the book Play to Win. I'll post that, and My Fulfilling Life tool for everybody who is interested in that. I'll post the links to those in the comments. And the 7 years exercise, I loved that. I'm going to look at that again as well. Mm-hmm. And I'll post that too.
Here's another one that's like gets really focused too, dovetailing to the 7-year one, is imagine you only have 24 hours left to live. Mm. Who are you going to want to be with?
Yeah.
What do you talk about? What regrets do you have? What are you not worried about?
Wow.
And I was there for that last 24 hours of my dad's life 5 years ago. And it didn't matter what kind of house he lived in or how much was in his retirement account. Like, of course it did for my mom, like, and that was important, but surpassingly more important is the people and the impact that he made, that we make on others. That is what it's on. And I'll share, this is a whole nother probably conversation, but last year I became fascinated studying trees and seeing the parallels between trees and life. And when I had reflected that summer or fall of 2018 and like, how do we really condense these lessons? I call it 4 pillars of living by design, and then ended up weaving them into the tree analogy. And it starts with roots, right? Having a healthy root system, that is actually the most important aspect of a tree. And that's kind of our internal life of thoughts and belief. You can't see the roots for the most part, but did you know that they go as deep as the tree does high? Fascinating for like the 80-foot oak tree we have in our front yard, like just mind-boggling. But that internal work is difficult. Like you said, it's courageous, and it requires like just this deep sense of resilience. Like, and it's not comfortable, but it will ultimately create this greater tree and fruit that will multiply in others.
And I do want people to feel comfortable with that and comfortable with whatever your past is and your history is. It made you the great person, the great tree that you are now, and own the glory of that. And it comes from those roots, and be solid in the greatness of what those are, and understand that you can choose what you're focusing on going forward and the fruits of what you're going to create.
That's right. I love that Brene Brown, she talks a lot about shame. And she said, if you put shame in a petri dish and douse it with empathy, it cannot survive.
Yeah.
And how often, like, do we feel this sense of shame or inferiority or...
That's one reason I don't like when people say, be the best version of yourself. Like, no, you're not a version. You just are yourself.
You be the best you.
Yes, this is you. This is a stage or a season of your life.
Yeah.
You're not a version. This is just you, and own you, and love.
That's the second pillar. That's the second aspect of the tree, is to identify what kind of tree are you.
Yes. Yes.
Where do you thrive, and what are your values and visions, and what gives you joy, and then play to your strengths.
Yes.
And stop comparing yourself and thinking you're superior or inferior to someone else.
You don't need to be a version.
An entirely different tree.
Yes.
So.
Yes. And the world needs a lot of trees and different kinds of trees. They don't just need one kind of tree.
That's right.
Yeah. Right on. I love that.
Yeah.
I love it. That's beautiful.
Yeah. The third and fourth elements briefly of the tree are, the third is perspective. And so identifying, well, one, how often can we get caught in a knothole in a tree? Like, focus on something small, like, well, let's take a step back and don't lose the forest or the trees.
Yeah.
And, but also, what season are you in? Like, does it feel like winter and just barren, and understanding life has seasons, even in the markets and finance, there are seasons,
right.
4-year cycles, which is just like a spring, summer, fall, winter. Fascinating. So having that perspective, knowing what season you're in. And then the last one is expansion and playing to win, right? And the sky's the limit with trees. Often pruning can be an important part of expanding, which is like, ow, but this is good and there's fruit here. But is it keeping you from further fruitfulness? And
that's what we just had a lawn expert over the other day that said we need to trim some of the trees so more sun can come in. So sometimes you have to prune so that the more growth can happen in other areas of your life. So Absolutely. Oh my gosh, this analogy could go on for all kinds of things. Yeah.
I ended up interviewing an arborist and
good.
all these. So I could talk for a long time.
Yeah, I love that.
This lighting is driving me crazy. Hold on.
I know.
like really dark outside. So I don't have my ring light handy. Otherwise I would turn that on.
And the lighting, of course, was perfect an hour ago or so when we checked. And when we were together on Friday and outside, and then a storm came, and it was one of the worst storms that we've had certainly all year, and if not for a couple of years. And and speaking of trees were uprooted all over town, and people are still without power, and really struggling. So
that's the thing too, is if people focus, not that we can't focus on external metrics of success and building a career or a family or what have you, but if we're just focused on these things for the externals and we don't have a good root system, right? Again, that internal life and knowing who you are and your value in that versus what you do, then if there's a weak root system, those trees are going to come down.
That's right.
Cause a lot of damage along the way.
That's right. That's right. And and then anytime there's a crisis, anytime something goes wrong, then then you become a victim or a martyr, or you can't make a decision, you get stuck. So the self-worth has to come from inside. So having that deep root system, the knowing what you're all about, knowing who you are, getting that self-worth internally, and then use that for good. So you can have a nice house, you can have a cool job title, you can make a lot of money, you can have all the things. Just don't let those be how you measure your self-worth, or how you judge other people and their value.
And by the way, I was listening to another podcast the other day, Dr. Peter Attia. So he's an MD. He has a book called Outlive. So he's all about lifespan and well-being, right? And he said that really the three elements are exercise, diet, and that like emotional well-being, right? Like it's not just about the inside. And he said often and I love this. I'm like, come on, that's what I'm talking about, of looking at your childhood and what, based on, sorry, this lighting.
I know it looks so funny now because you have dark hair and it's all dark. Oh, there we go. That's better. Okay.
It's gonna be like blue, but it's life. We're not perfect, right? We can't march it on. So often we can take good things away. And this is something my dad didn't realize until he was on his deathbed, and one of his brothers, he was one of 7 kids. And the one he was closest to, my dad's name was Jerry. And Jim, his older brother, said, "I'm sorry for being so hard on you growing up." And he's like, "What do you mean? You were the one that was nicest to me." And he had no idea until then, it wasn't this conscious awareness that, he was actually the scapegoat of his family. He didn't know that. Jim is the one that told him. And it just like that's true of most alcoholic families and substance, and there are archetypes, there are stereotypes, and he was the scapegoat. And so he had lived with this, like, let me prove my worth, right? That's what motivated him. And he had done it well, but yet he shared with me as he's reflecting on his life before he died, like it was like this treadmill, like he could never rest, or if he took a step to the side, he would fall on his face, and then everyone would see that he was a fraud or whatever. And it was just this so there are good things that we can take from our childhood, whether it's hard work or resilience or, whatever else that looks like. But then there are also negative things like the harsh self-talk or perfectionism that, like, we can learn to let go, but it's critical to have good self-care.
Right.
Finding your value and who you are versus what you do.
And figuring that out so you choose to move forward in your life however you want to. You be the person that you want to be, and don't be negative self-talk, because that's how you were spoken to as a kid. Know better and do better now, and choose to not talk to yourself that way. And that's a habit you might need to break, and that can take work and time, but you can choose to not be like that too. And
it is a journey.
make that effort to treat yourself differently. And however, if that's just an example, but just because that's how you were raised, that doesn't mean that's how you have to continue living.
Yeah. And I love the analogy of like a mountain, right? Like with this journey and this development, you can have breakthrough and seasons where it's like, okay, that was difficult, but we made it through it. And then you get around the mountain and it's like, but I thought I already went. Like you're just at a different level. And like keep going. And ultimately it is about the journey and not about a destination. It is about who you become versus what you do and who you get to impact. Going back to the tree analogy, trees will innately create so much fruit at the end of their lives that their branches are weighed down by the weight of it all. And so we naturally want, like you want to pass it on, like
interesting
wisdom, and like we were made to make an impact. Another thing too that's unbelievable is that the root systems are connected underground, and they actually share nutrients and resources. And if it wasn't for the older trees sharing their nutrients with the younger trees, oftentimes the younger trees wouldn't survive.
Right.
But the same goes true at the end of a tree's life. Often the younger ones are helping nourish it. Like, again, so many parallels.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that is so interesting. Yeah, I've used the tree analogy, but I hadn't interviewed an arborist about it. Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah. And the choice is yours of how you're going to choose to live every day and impact other people.
And community is so important. Like before, like we cannot thrive alone.
Right.
But it takes humility to realize I can't do it all by myself. And I know as a mom with young kids, like I actually had a lot of difficulty, and that's been part of the inner work. Like I remember it was about a year ago asking, like, why is it so hard to ask for help? My husband's always happy, like if I ask him, but I want him to just like see it and do it versus me asking, because that felt like a point of weakness. And I was actually praised in my childhood for being impressive and for doing something and for people to look at me and say, wow. And he's not going to look at me and say, wow, if I ask for help. Right. So,
well, I had another friend years ago when she became a mom, and she told me that she asked her husband to do something, and he said, yeah, I'll be glad to do that for you. And she said, no, it's not a favor for me. This is for the family. So like, be clear that you're not doing it for me. This is your role as a dad. Like know what your role is too. And like, don't take the burden of that. And, I thought that was really interesting. I remember that that's a good 20 or 30 years ago that she said that. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. And unlike the tree though, we can move. So if you're in a community that is not serving you well and you're not contributing the best that you can and it's bringing you down, the tree is stuck there, but we can move. So you can go find another community, and, and there's communities everywhere, and go search for a new community if you need a new community. So there are a lot of different types of communities all over the place now. So, yeah. So good. And that's living by design. If you uproot yourself and go put new roots down somewhere else, that's the ultimate, really.
Yeah. Where can you thrive?
Choosing where. Yeah. I love that.
Yes.
So good. Well, I have a lot to do. I'm excited to do these exercises again. Yeah, that's good. Okay. I'll put all of those in the comments. What's something that you're looking forward to?
I think just from an impact standpoint, it's the wholehearted wealth, and the confident pursuit of abundance and joy. And that came to me a little over a year ago. So taking a heart-centric approach to finance, I feel like it's pioneering a new space.
Cool.
So excited to build that. I actually just am in the process. I passed a really, really difficult test in the end of May.
Congratulations.
And yeah, thank you. So we can do fee-based planning now, which means we can sit down with someone and just charge a fee for a plan versus feeling like the only way to get compensated is if we sell them something or manage assets for them.
Okay.
And so I've been listening to podcasts about more about the fee-based planning aspect of it. And I'm excited to build content and to help interweave these into the financial planning discussion.
Oh, good.
Intentionally.
Good. Instead of selling a retirement plan or an insurance plan or something like a product.
Yeah, people naturally would think, oh, I got it taken care of.
Yeah.
Where, it's natural to kind of want to procrastinate or think, I know I should do that, but, so, but to get to approach it from truly, an advocacy and a counselor standpoint, and just to play to my strengths, that I just love this stuff and I'm excited.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah.
Yay. I'm excited to see how all that unfolds for you too.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing all of that with everybody today. And I love that it's so aligned with the fulfilling life and the just the intention and the heart of all of that we're so aligned with the people living by design for a fulfilling life on purpose. And just that by itself is so important and so good for people.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for all that you're doing.
Fresh water, hopefully, for a Thursday.
Yes. Thank you. And thank you everybody who joined us live or who I forgot to look at the comments. So hopefully there weren't any, but I'll check the comments later if there were some and reply. And I'll leave the tools in the comments later when I can access that. And look forward to keeping in touch with you and to hearing from everybody else as we go along. So thank you very much, Kristin.
Thank you for being here today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.